Perfect. Well, thank you all for being here. Let me come by and hang out and bring some lunch. So, yeah, talking to Brian, he alluded to just kind of so if we could get some general state of just kind of the market and rates and the economy and kind of expectations around that. So super fun topic for sure. But we definitely know that has been quite the topic here over the last handful of months, right? So it's rates, where they at, where they going, inventory, all that good stuff. So just wanted to take a quick, just super high level look at kind of the history of kind of rates over the last few decades or so, how rates have responded to high inflation economies for the U.S., and then just how it responds on the back end. So we get a little bit of a recession. So, so the next slide, you could leave it here for a second. Okay. The next slide will kind of paint a better picture of this, but essentially we'll look kind of at the Fed shares from the 70s to middle 80s. You'll see that there's quite a bit of that was kind of the energy prices back then. Saw a lot of movement in just kind of the market and rates. Alan Greenspan from kind of the 90s to the mid-aughts, and then Jerome Powell, that's who we have today. So actually, yeah, let's jump to that next slide real quick. So you'll see just as the economy moves, as kind of the bars with the yellow brackets essentially is kind of the inflation and recession kind of response to the economy. So you'll see kind of in the early 80s, kind of some big jumps from, let's say if you look at that kind of the second one from 18. Wait a second, 16. So it jumps from like 12 and a half up to 16, and then on the backside of inflation, once that recession hits, it drops from 16 down to 11.75. You fast forward a few years, it jumps back up to 18%. Then once that inflation kind of levels out, we hit that recession, it comes back down to 13%. So it highlights a couple trends just over the decades kind of leading up to today, just so we can kind of see a little bit of a trend, right? So once we have high inflation, once that inflation kind of is addressed and levels out, we typically see kind of a drop on the back end. And so that's kind of what the hope and the expectation is for where we sit today. So this graph ends at 2022, and it stopped, I think, at about 3.5%. Right now, the Fed increased rates to 5.25%. So that line has continued to go up from where it ends on this graph. But that's just kind of a quick little snapshot of just how it's looked over the course of time and kind of the trend thereof between inflation and kind of the recession on the back end of it. So, so on the next slide, obviously inventory is a big deal as well, right? So with rates going up, coupled with where rates were a few years ago, we have so many folks that are sitting on 2, 3, maybe 4% interest rates, right? When we had the lowest we've ever had in the history of rates. So that coupled with rates being at 7.5, right? So if you're going to move, I mean, values have gone up. To leave like a 3.5% to go up to a 7.25, 7.5 is just a hard pill to swallow, right? So people are not moving, and in turn, there's not as much inventory, right? As y'all know and see. So with this, if we look at from 07 to I think this is 20 up to 21. In 07, so that was the housing bubble, or and everything crashed then, right? So there was a peak of 3.7 million homes inventory wise. Fast forward to 21, we're sitting at 870, right? So that number has ticked up a little bit over the last kind of year, 2 years, but that's a big gap, right? I mean, call it $3 million or 3 million less homes available for purchase. So if you couple that with the next slide here, of just how many households there are, you see the trend from 07 to 21, just the number of people owning homes has increased, right? So a $14 million $14 million household increase, right, coupled with a 3 million reduction in available inventory, kind of creates this ridiculous kind of situation.
That's the ones that I hadn't seen. Yeah, I mean, all the stuff kind of loosely familiar, but the difference in total households, that's significant. Like, that's a huge jump.
So this represents people that own, right? So you see the trend increasing, that continues to increase, plus just the people that are wanting to buy, right? First time home buyers. So we're just fitting all of those people into this small little bucket of available homes to purchase. Makes it interesting. So we have a lot of folks. I mean, kind of what that looks like for us is we have a lot of people that are applying, that are interested in buying, and either they don't find the right home, right? So like, I'm just going to wait, I'm going to hold tight. Or you have folks that are sitting on that low rate. They're like, I don't want to make a move. I'm going to wait until, so I either find the right house, or I'm just going to hold tight and just sit on this equity that they built over the course of the last 5 years. It's a ridiculous increase there. So that's a little bit of just kind of a quick little history snapshot of just kind of rates and inventory and kind of what that has looked like for us. Obviously a key thing is just kind of what the Fed is communicating today. They had a meeting in July. And so anytime we hear the Fed kind of communicate their findings, right? It's all about the stats and the information, but it's also kind of the feel and how they present it kind of, plays into the response of the market for us. So typically, just so you know, like prior to the Fed meeting, there's normally a little bit of a ramp up in rates, right? We kind of know what they're going to more than likely say, right? So we kind of prepare for, in case there's something bad that they might say, or it might be different than expectations. So there's a ramp up. If it hits kind of what we think, right, then it kind of comes back down. If it's worse, it might stay or even go higher than kind of that ramp up. So normally, if we have somebody that's looking to lock like right before a Fed meeting, it's pretty volatile, right? And if it's, it's all about do we want to hold tight until after the Fed meeting to see if it comes back down? So it's just kind of always an interesting time for us. But I jotted just a couple notes on the last Fed meeting on that next slide, and so really the two main things to kind of I wanted to highlight is one, they raised rates again by 0.25%. And everything is kind of moving in a generally good direction, but getting inflation to the desired level has a long way to go, right? So the hope was that they're going to maybe increase it one more time, maybe level things out kind of as the year continues. But when Powell mentioned, we still have some ground to make up. It just kind of, the anticipation is that they're probably going to raise rates one or maybe two more times this year. So we'll see how that plays out. It's all about collecting information and data from them. So they've collected, additional reports since their July meeting. They're meeting again in September. So we'll see. So some of the verbiage is coming out saying that, hey, we might keep things level, here in September. So we'll see. Then if you jump to the next slide. So how all that plays into kind of just where we're sitting today. So obviously rates, if they're going to continue to increase, the golden question is when are they going to potentially come back down, right? When are we going to kind of hit that peak and then see a little bit of correction or drop in rates? The expectation is that's just going to happen, right? It's just when. And so the response is like, so what are we going to do from now until then? And then after the fact, how does the market respond to that when rates do fall back down? So just looking at kind of just current trends in the DFW area, I thought it's just wild to see the number that home prices have risen 53, almost 54% over the past 5 years.
And then people still call me every April and gripe about their taxes going up 8%, 10%.
Right. I know it.
You can't have your cake and eat it too.
Yeah.
There is. Oops, drop one. When house prices go up 53% in 5 years, I mean, that is at least a 10% a year increase.
Right.
But taxes are, I just think it's funny that occurs every single April. And I'm like, have you not seen the market?
Yeah.
Right.
Let me show you. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. No, you're great. And so another interesting stat is just kind of the sales ratio is 0.994%, meaning that homes are selling at approximately 99.4% of their list price, right? So some of that is, so that indicates a balanced market. Some of that is due to values that kind of dip back down from the crazy inflation, right? So there are inflated values. Some of it's inflated, but if it holds, right, time will tell.
I don't want to interrupt. Okay.
So, the market comps all of that. If values kind of spike up the way that they have, but if those values continue to hold, people are buying at that level, then we have comps to support it. It's a true value, right? It's not necessarily a level. So there has been a little bit of a dip, right? But that helps with that kind of keeping sales price, ask price the same as list price to keep that balanced market. So, as far as how that applies to buyers and sellers today, I guess that's, kind of a pretty important question. Like, how does this data affect kind of your clients today? If you have somebody on the fence of, I don't know if I want to sell, it's crazy, rates are high, I might just hold tight. Since there is low inventory, I'm sure y'all have probably seen some, if it's a decent house that hits the market, it's going to go quick and you're going to have competition, right? There's some homes that might sit a little bit longer, but with low inventory, there's still people wanting to buy. There's still very qualified folks just kind of sitting on the sidelines, just waiting for the right thing to pop up, and they're just going to be patient. So, high demand definitely helps the seller, right? And then as far as the buyer, again, rates are high. I don't know if I want to jump into this market. Values have kind of gone up. Well, there's a dip, right? They've come back down. And then I'll show you the next slide here in a second. I'll show you just kind of what it looks like if you buy now, refi later, as opposed to wait. So you can have some numbers and data to kind of help support if you buy now, if there's benefit to do that, right? If you can acquire the house that you want, if it's available to acquire it now, you can get the numbers to kind of fall in your favor later on, right? Once rates kind of drop back down. So it's kind of, having data information kind of in your back pocket so you can kind of help not push people, but encourage them, just let them know kind of what options are and kind of what to expect. Yeah. So
our motto's been marry the house, date the rate.
That's right. Yep.
That's what we've been preaching for all summer long.
Yeah.
And force the sellers to pay for a bigger buy down. Ask her to do that. That's a little tongue in cheek, but like lately, encouraging people to put in the concessions in the initial offer too. You just be like, look, this is the cost of doing business nowadays. Yeah, and try to be on the front end of that, because I think it's going to happen more and more and more. Especially with those houses that are sitting for 60, 90 days. We're starting to see a lot of those price drops. I think there'll be some deals. There's going to be some opportunities there in the short term, but
well, it's good. Yeah, it's good you brought that up. As far as if a home is sitting, I think last time we came in, we kind of talked through just the permanent rate buy down, but also the temporary, the 2-1 buy downs. It has to come from the seller, but $10,000. If you put the numbers in front of the buyer, as far as what a $10,000 reduction in just sales price does for the ultimate monthly payment, it's not going to move much. Like $30-$40, right? That doesn't really. It might feel good to the buyer, but if they're putting 95, if they're borrowing 95%, their cash to close doesn't change much. Their monthly payment doesn't change much. But if you put that $10K to a buy down, and that first year it's a 2% reduction in interest rate, that's a sizable savings that will get some movement. So,
and it doesn't even have to be a big buy down in my personal experience, because I've got a buyer right now on a house in Creekwood in Saginaw that's $413,000. The buy down was $2,700 for a 1-year buy down.
Yeah, that's great.
$2,700. It's nothing to the seller.
But how much down payment?
Or what did it get their
20% on this one.
What did it get their rate down to?
It's just a
It's
1-0 buy down.
1-0 buy down for
Yeah.
12 months,
Yeah.
which gives them a little bit of flexibility through the election of next year.
Yeah.
Which we all have been talking about. Politicians are going to be changing things because they can't be reelected if the economy is not doing well. It's pretty simple.
Yeah.
They just can't. And so a 1-year buy down for $2,600, it's nothing. And the seller didn't have to reduce the sales price. They're at $415. We offered $413, got a $2,600 buy down. Everybody wins.
I'm gonna forget this question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I also learned there is a limit on.
Yeah.
There is.
That might be outlier. That might be outlier.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
It's good to go big though. Like go big, get it agreed upon. You're like, well, you agreed to 15K. Like
Yeah.
I know. I've done that a couple times. I got like 18 or 19, and like, oh, okay, no, turns out we can't use this. Well, let's use 5K on reduction or in something else.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of choice.
I have
Maybe
one,
extra, just throw it to the production sales price.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, still use it.
I have one that has occurred in the last year that there was a concession, and I was the listing agent. We get to closing, we got 2,600 extra bucks that they couldn't use and didn't take it.
Why didn't they reduce the price?
They left it on the table.
That's crazy.
My seller walked away with 26 extra $100. It was,
Yeah.
Or for your clients.
I got the CD, the CD. I was like,
Yeah.
Like,
are you,
Yeah.
Because it's what is it? Is it 3%? Is the max concessions if you're what's
I put it on Slack last week. What the concessions were.
3%, 10%,
Yeah.
6% to 29, 20. And then FHA, I think is just a set 6.
Okay.
You might have answered this question last time that you came. On the buy down, if the rates go lower than what they bought, are they able to refinance or do they have to wait the?
Nope. Yep. You can refinance. So the dollar amount for the temporary buy down, it's just the seller is prepaying the interest up front. That money goes into escrow essentially. So from the note rate is still, let's say if the note rate is 7.25, let's just mark it right. So 7.25, you have a 1-0 buy down for that first year. The payment for the buyer for the new homeowner is based off of 6.25. So if that's a $2,400 difference each month, the lender is collecting the lower payment from the homeowner and then pulling $200 from that escrow to make the payment full. Right. So that balance, when you refinance, it just is a principal reduction.
So they can. in the-
Refinance at any time.
Okay.
Yeah. And they get that money back. It's not cash in hand, but it's lowers their
Adjusted to
loan.
that.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yep.
What's a refi cost these days? Just been
Some of it,
$400,000 house. Just give me a ballpark figure.
I would say timing matters. The title policy is the most expensive line item because you own the house, you got to pay for the new title policy. So if you refi within, between 1 to 7 years, you get a reduction in that title policy if it fits within kind of those brackets. I would say a refi just in general is just $4,000 to $5,000. Pay for title. If you have to get a new appraisal, if you have to get a new survey, right? So some of that stuff comes off, but
So let's play the game. So $5,000 on a refi. Let's just say that it costs $5,000. What happens when prices just go up 0.5% over the next 4 months? It still makes sense to pay the $5,000 because you're gaining so much more equity in the house before March of next year than just paying. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Everybody get that?
Well, to your points from the previous conversation, even $5,000 in a multiple offer situation market.
It's nothing.
Yes.
It's
It's
nothing.
nothing because I'm gonna have to go out almost 20K if I really want the house.
It's nothing.
yeah. Well, the last slide that I had kind of
Oh, look at you go, man.
plays roughly alongside. So this is just a buy now, refi later, right? So the left column is, let's say if you buy today, $500,000 home, 5% down, 7.25. You can disregard the mortgage insurance. I shouldn't even put it in there. The main thing is the principal and interest, right? It's 32.40. So you see that the payment, it's kind of the bottom section, top line item. Yep. So that's your monthly payment, right? So if you buy now, and then let's say in 6-8 months, rates drop, goes down to 6%, right? You refinance, take advantage of that. Your payment's going to be $28.47. So that's like a $400 difference, right? And that makes a difference. It's worth to refinance that.
So let me just extrapolate that. So if it's $400 cheaper 6 months from now, and you go down $400, that's $4,800 a year that you're saving. If it costs you $5,000, you pay for it in 1 year.
Yep. That's when somebody calls to ask about a refi, it's all about break even, right? You know, if depends on loan size, maybe a half a point or 3/4 of a drop in rate matters, right? And it's all about how long you're going to stay in this house. What's the break even? So, and then if you look at the last line, so let's say somebody's like, I don't want to buy now. I'm going to wait for rates to drop. They wait 6 months, 8 months. If there's competition on the house or just natural appreciation, they're buying it for $550, right? Then put 5% down at a 6% rate. Your payment's $31.32. So you're still paying more, even though you waited for the lower rate. It feels good to get that at the right time. You're still paying more in the long run than if you were to get the house now and then refi later on.
So you're paying out more money at a pocket of closing.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
So your cash to close goes up $2,000. Your payment actually comes down $100 a month. But how long does it take you to get that money back on $100 a month? But you just paid $50,000 more for the property, waiting 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we've been tooting all summer long. Marry the house, buy the rates,
Yeah.
because it doesn't make sense to wait. This is the time for everybody to get off the fence.
Yep. But I think once rates drop, once they do hit 6, or if it falls, I mean, if it hits 6, it's going to be advertised 5.75. This feels better, right? If it falls into the 5s, these people that are waiting, they're gonna jump into the game. They're gonna start, getting a little bit more aggressive. People are gonna be okay to walk away from a 3.75 to go to a 5.75. It's a you're walking away from some savings, but it's not 7.25, right? So I think that's going to create movement. It's going to create competition. And so, in this market, DFW is just one of a kind, pretty much right now in the nation, right? I mean, it's wild, and what we're seeing. So, and I think just from an inventory standpoint, I should have mentioned this earlier. There's an article, I think, in Dallas Morning News that I think it's Dallas, San Antonio, or Austin, and Orlando were the 3 markets with the highest gap in inventory or the highest percent of low inventory. Why am I phrasing that weird? The least amount of inventory. That's what I'm trying to.
Based on the population.
Based on yeah. So it's kind of the areas with the least options for buyers right now. So
That's why we have so many apartment complexes popping up everywhere.
yeah, they still don't have enough. I mean, there's still a shortage.
We passed New York City as the biggest population for apartments 6 years ago.
There we go.
Oh, wow.
We have more apartments in Dallas-Fort Worth than New York City.
They're popping up like in these small little lots.
Mhm.
They're going up.
That's probably what's going to go right here beside us, is apartments. That little lot.
There's like zoning change requests, parking
Yeah.
lots.
Mhm.
I don't know
That's
if you
true.
guys ever been up, there's like a lawn farm. I live across the street and you've been dividing off pieces of that.
Yeah.
I don't even know how much that is worth or what they would sell that
Oh,
for.
it's worth a
So
lot.
much.
They sold, I think, half of it and they built these, all
Did
the
they?
homes there are like 900,000 bucks now. I think when they.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But they're nice homes.
One of the next waves that we're about to see, there is a lot of commercial space available in the downtown areas throughout all of the metro areas, not just Dallas-Fort Worth, but across the country. The next wave that we're about to see is the developers figuring out when, where, and how it makes sense to convert that commercial office space into living space because we need housing. We don't need so much commercial because of the pandemic and how we work differently. Paradigm shift, if you've ever heard that. The paradigm shift during the pandemic. Oh, we don't all have to go into work every day. I can go in 3 days a week and I'm fine. Well, Brian Buffini even said it in his video this morning. He's got all this 4 buildings that they only, and 78 employees work out of state. He doesn't need the office space. What are you going to do with that office space? Is it going to sit vacant? Are the developers and owners going to let that space continue to not make money? No. There's going to be a wave of conversion that's coming. I don't know how quick that is. I think that's more like 25. I think they'll sit on it for another year personally before they do anything with it because they want to see if commercial is going to come back. But I heard something that in Dallas-Fort Worth, we have 30% of our office buildings are empty. 30% of our space is available and not moving. That's a huge number. And that doesn't really, it doesn't directly impact us as SFR agents, realtors. But if you ever get a chance to take commercial class, not a bad idea. Not a bad idea to get familiar with that terminology and how that will help you. So Scott, dude, great.
Good.
Awesome information. Q&A. We got Scott. We'll hold him hostage for 30 minutes.
Well, I was just thinking of the refinance. When they come to you, I mean, at what point does it make sense? Does 0.5% really make a difference? If they're going to pay
Loan size,
$5,000?
again, yeah, loan size matters on that. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. If it's there, I always try to have the conversation, right? If it's a past client, I'll say, hey, I'll just send them numbers, say, hey, this is what it looks like. Once rates start dropping, it's going to be all in the news. Everyone's going to be talking about it. Like, where are they at? What does it look like? So it all comes down to break even, right? So again, with a refi, that cost is there. Let's say it's $5,000. If they have equity, roll it into the loan, right? So it's not out of pocket. So if you own the house, you can roll that cost in. So, but that plays into loan to value. So as long as there's enough equity to do that, right? Mortgage insurance is a key factor. So if somebody put 5% down and let's say rates drop 6 months from now and they don't have the equity per se, then they have to bring some of that to the table. So you don't want to go overnight. MI would just be brutal. So,
and let's think about it. Do houses in the Metroplex have the ability to appreciate $5,000 in 6 months?
Yes.
yeah. Yeah. And a lot of times on refis, we get the waiver on our side, the appraisal waiver.
Mhm.
So Fannie and Freddie. So every loan that comes through every bank's system, we run it through the automated system for Fannie and Freddie pretty much, right? So they collect that data. And so they know what people are kind of buying homes for. So if they have any data on the house and in the neighborhood, they have a general idea as to kind of what the value of that home is. And if you get the waiver, let's say if somebody bought for 400 and I put in 410 6 months from now and I get the waiver, I'll just keep bumping that up because every 5% makes a difference on MI, right? So it's a reduction in your mortgage insurance. So I might bump it up. If I get it at 410, I'll throw it in at 420. If I get it there, as long as we get the approval, we can use it, right? So that definitely matters as well. So if you can get a little reduction in principal and interest as well as mortgage insurance, then that starts to add up and it really makes sense.
Can you explain more about rolling equity into things? So let's say my first time home buyers, they're like everyone else, worried about interest rates, waiting.
Mhm.
But obviously getting them this information and then say they are able to get it by the next 2 years. In 2 years, they build some equity. How would that go into their refinance?
They can use that the equity to cover closing costs. Yeah. So they can't until you have 20% equity or 80% loan to value. At that point, you can start pulling cash out. You can't exceed that 80%. But that equity can be used to cover costs. on a refi.
So what about the equity that 50% of the population has? How can that be used now? So we would take out an equity in order to purchase another house. That would be the idea, right?
Right, if you want to go non-contingent and you have that equity, right, you can pull out a bridge loan or a second lien of line of credit, right? Use that for the down payment.
Do you do those?
Uh-huh.
You do?
Yep.
Okay.
And so yeah, so you can use that, get your new loan structured, right, how you want it, and then when you resell your house, you can put more equity towards it. You can always recast, right, which is
But does recast change the terms? I thought they stay the same. You just get a fee charged and it removes
Costs
the balance or the principal, right? It reduces the principal, but the terms stay the same.
right. So it's like doing a refi without paying for it,
Right.
right? So it's let's say if somebody has 30% equity in a house, they pull 10 out to buy the new house, and the numbers make sense. You still have to get qualified DTI, what that's income wise based off both houses. So it's kind of the maybe potentially tricky part. But if they use that 10% for down payment and closing costs and prepays, then when they sell their house, that extra 20% they can put towards the loan that they just pulled out, right? So if that might be maybe 5% down, right, on the new house. So if that extra 20% gets them to 20%, gives them that 20% equity or 80% loan to value, and mine falls off, and then you pay the $300 to recast, lowers the principal amount. They recalculate the payment based off that principal reduction. Your rate stays the same. Your maturity date stays the same. We don't change the note or the deed or anything. It just recalculates the numbers. So and you can do that anytime, right? I mean, every bank, every servicing department is going to have a different minimum principal reduction, right? So some might be 5,000, some might be 15,000. So you just have to check with servicing. But if you ever want to, if you have a chunk of change and you want to put it towards your loan and lower your monthly payment, anyway, you can do it every time. So
Other question, when you said that on the bridge, what's the grace period? Is there a grace period when my next payment is due on if I already have my new home and my other one's still on it? Is there a grace period when I owe my first payment, or is it just 45 days out?
It's just like a normal transaction. So you're going to skip a month, right? So interest is always paid in arrears. So if you close today, your first payment would be October 1st, right? And then bridge loan is going to be interest only, and then call it a 12-month, right? Before it comes to. So.
Question.
Bridge loan, you do with them. So, okay, so I'm gonna give you a scenario. Right now, I've got a client that didn't go with a lender that had that capability of doing a bridge loan. So it has caused me a world of headache for the last 3 weeks because they didn't listen to me. Okay, love them. Youth minister at my church. It's okay. It's okay. Oh, my wife just said it's going to be fine. So, but what we had to do is we had to get them completely approved for their next mortgage. We had to put an offer on their house contingent on the sale of their current house. As soon as we got this one done and into the option period and started the inspection, I had to put this one on the market, had to price it super aggressively so that I could sell it in 3 to 4 days so that I could fulfill my contingency on the next one. It would have been so much easier if I'd had known that you have the ability to do what some other lenders are capable of, but it's very, very few. And that's why I'm honestly, I'm a little surprised that you have them, but I want to know more about it, because what this other lender has is something called buy now, sell later. And what they do is that exact thing you were talking about is you don't count the debt of the current house, correct? And you go, or do you count that debt on their DTI to go buy another house? How much can I qualify for? Get a bridge loan to get the down payment, get this house closed, and then I can worry about selling this one.
We're on the bridge, we're not, right? Because the bridge is only looking at that one house, right? So they're only worried about the house they currently own.
Okay.
So, but on my side, with that bridge there, we're still going to count the payment for that.
So you'd have to be qualified for both houses in that case. But a bridge loan is possible if you do qualify for owning both of those
Yeah.
houses.
Yep, but
Okay.
it's interest only, all of that, right? So it hopefully, I mean, depends what the rate is, right? So the hope is that it
And
puts it
then
in a little bit lower monthly payments.
how many months must the house sell? Is there like it must sell between 6 months, if not, what is the term to?
Yeah, I think a bridge is a 12-month note,
Okay.
interest only.
12 months is the.
Yeah. So as long as they're fine carrying 2 notes, 2 payments, to give them some time to sell. Yep.
But you're pulling your equity out of your current home on the bridge loan. So basically, you could just instead of doing a bridge loan, you could just pull the equity out of your house with a HELOC.
Yep.
And you can use that as a down payment on the next house?
Well, okay, that is very interesting.
Okay.
So what if now I'm not gonna sell it anymore? I take out everything out of the house, all the equity.
Not all, but
80%.
80%.
That's
Yeah.
right. You know what, I'm thinking, yeah, never mind, because I was thinking if you own the house, you just take out all. the
Okay,
equity.
well, I'm still with her same line of questioning. So you take out 80% of the equity and then you keep the house. Now you've got a note on this house, but then you can take that money and buy another house without a contingency. Basically, and then you're gonna have 2 notes, right?
But one of them is interest only and the other one is still.
if you get the bridge loan,
Yes.
not if you pull out the HELOC. If you pull out home equity line of credit, then you're paying you're paying the HELOC. Is there a HELOC rate
Yeah.
that you pay it back at, or is it you just borrowing from yourself basically?
No, there's a rate to it.
It's
Okay.
higher too, like 10% or something, right? Well,
Some are starting to, because it's typically prime plus.
yeah, that's
Okay.
what I talked to
So-
one about. So,
But if
okay.
if you're tight on cash, even if you need to pull 15K, you don't have to go all the way up to
Sure.
the full 80%, right? But if you just need some cash and you have that equity there, you can tap it.
And then we saw earlier, 68% of the United States houses have 50% of equity or more. 68% of the homes in the United States. They've got the equity in the house. They can pull out
For sure.
20K or 40K to go and put it down on a new house. Okay, so let's talk about the difference there between a HELOC and a bridge loan. What's a bridge loan rate? Is it higher than a HELOC?
It's a little bit lower, yeah.
It's lower?
Yeah, it's a little bit lower. I
Okay.
mean, it might be kind of around 8, right?
Okay.
But yeah.
Because a HELOC would be considered like cash, is that one?
Like a line of credit.
It's a
like
line of
credit
credit,
card.
that's what it is, yeah,
Yeah, it's like a credit card.
Yeah.
So
that's why.
So you've got options. Go ahead, Greg.
No, I was gonna ask, can you refinance a, investment loan or investment property, same way you can as your primary residence?
Yeah, the loan to value requirements are gonna be, well, especially on cash. I'm thinking cash out. Yes, you can refinance.
You're saying like if I buy a house like today for like a rental,
Mhm.
obviously rates are really high. Say in 2 or 3 years they go down, I would still be able to refinance that house.
Yep.
Okay, even though I don't live in it.
Correct. Yep, you can refi as an investment property. Gotcha.
And investment loans were usually like minimum 20% down.
You can do as little as 15, but the pricing right now is just crazy. You're gonna be at the very, high end of the rate sheet. So it might be 8.25, and you're gonna pay 3 points.
If you were able to do like
15%
20,
down, but if you did
25% down.
20, you're still gonna be same rate. You might knock off a couple points. If you put 25% down, that's kind of where you see a sizable break.
Okay,
So
so
it'll
it's
drop, you'll have to
somewhere
probably be a
around
par, might be 7,
somewhere
7.5,
around
7.6. something like that.
7.5%. Or
Just-
give or take.
Yeah.
So just a little bit higher than what we're
Yeah.
seeing in mortgage rates.
Yeah.
At 25% down.
Yeah, in a normal market, right, typically I'll say an investment property is gonna be about 3/8 to a half a point higher in rate. It's kind of my general
Gotcha.
guidance there. Unless you put that 15 down, then it starts to get a little squirrely.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna put a bow around all this. We have options. But anybody that comes at you with, I don't want to do anything because A, B, C, or D, there are options. You just need to delve into them to learn what it is they're scared of. Where is their fear? And then that's where you put the Band-Aid, where their fear is. If they're scared of interest rates, we can talk about a buy down. We can talk about, there's several things we can talk about. But even if you feel like you're getting in over your head, it's okay to say, hey, let me get a lender on the phone. Let me call Scott and let's just have a conversation about where you are. The three of us can talk about this and we can figure out something that will work for you. Again, it comes back to just making the calls to your sphere of influence, getting to know their personal situation and figuring out where you can make the most impact on their life. Because everybody's got equity at this point, almost, unless they bought, even if they bought in 2021 in pandemic and they overpaid, the market has caught up to them. They probably can at least break even a little bit.
I
I've
have
had
a
people already
situation.
like that, multiple people who bought and then already selling again, right? Even paying realtor fees, able to break even.
So I have a VA. He purchased it June of last year. Paid 10,000 over asking price. 0 down. Lost it, well, he got sick. Asked for forbearance twice. Yes. So did the comps. It's lower than what he paid and it's lower than what he owes because of that forbearance. He owes $350. And the house to go on the market would be $315.
Because he overpaid. That was a year ago or two?
June of last year.
June of last
Yeah,
year.
that was just insane.
Well, now, okay. That's the caveat to everything that we're talking about because July was the high point. So anybody that bought last spring, fall,
Yeah, yeah.
they were the top and they're going to need to wait a year or two for the market to, especially if the way that we think is coming hits in the spring of next year, they will see appreciation. His house might be 385 in a year from now, even though it's 350 right now. But you get 2 or 3 closings in that neighborhood at 365, 370, 375, you're close.
So he's in the agent that he was already assigned told him that he needed to sell. Because his payment is $2,700. We did, okay, what if you lease it? It won't even cover it. So he's gonna have to sell. And then now we have to get it approved by the VA at the price that the market is now.
Because it may not be a quote unquote short sale, but it's going to act like one.
Yeah, a compromise. That's what they call it. And then his concern is also what happens to the overage deduction. Because I know one administration forgave the difference.
For a short time.
So I don't know what it is.
He gets a 1099. He
Like
gets-
as if you made that money.
That's what they started doing at the end of the short sale fiasco from 2012, as we were coming out of the 09 slump. That's what they ended up doing was they would, if you short sold anything, so like if your house, if you owed 350 and it sold for 320, and they would send you a 1099 for $30,000 of income. I don't know if they're still going to do that because I haven't seen it. It's not widespread at this point. But that's what they were doing because I had a couple sellers that got a 1099 from their mortgage company and said, you made 30 grand off of us. And at that time, it was still the best thing was to say, thank you and go pay your taxes. Better than sitting on the house which you couldn't afford that you were just going to get foreclosed on. The short sale was still the better option.
Yeah.
Because you weren't losing everything.
So I already have all his info and we'll be calling his direct VA liaison. Because he will have to submit all his financials and his pay stubs now, right?
What neighborhood is it in?
Necessary.
In Sendero Ranch? Sendero is still building. You could try to market that property at break even though the comps are telling you 350, 315, and he paid 350.
He paid $335, but since he has 0 down on the forbearance, they added it to the end, so now he has $350. He paid when he originally purchased it. He offered $340, 0 down.
And he wanted it that bad.
He wanted it that bad.
He wanted it at that bid.
Oh, yeah.
He paid 340 for the house.
Yes.
and you think the value is 315 now?
It's a 1,500 square.
What streets in it? New side or old side of Sendero?
No, it's old side. It's a 2000.
But rent, he can't rent it?
Or 2,000. That's the highest.
He loses $700 a month.
We cannot find a 1,500 square foot house in York County for 2,000, so I just assumed it would have been walk through that.
Yeah, it does. It does.
Do you think updates would,
Like it doesn't have one.
right? Do you think if there were, what kind of updates would be needed to get it to?
So it needs, so it has carpet. It's deteriorated, within 1 year. Kitchen is just for Monica. The appliances are just black. And it has solar panels.
I'm sorry?
It has solar panels.
This guy's.
No, they were owned outright. The seller that he got. No, the seller, paid him outright, so he only takes advantage of it. He doesn't know anything. Yeah,
That's a tough situation. And I think we will run into some of those as we go through this next season. We're going to because we're waiting for the market to catch up. I'm just going to catch up that much. I mean, that's 10%.
well, and what hurt him too is that it's zero down. He put nothing down.
Well.
I don't know where Sendero is, but this is screaming short-term rental.
That's
He
on the
needs to move
VA.
out, rent something in short-term rental. That's what I would. But
Well, and he has a job now, which we talked about, well, what if you do lease it for the $2,000 and you just
Right.
pay the $700 out of pocket?
Right.
But the wife is not. So he got married too in January. So she also has some influence on the decision making. She was dating.
she wants him to buy him a different house.
No, so he owns a house in Boyd that he's outright. So they're just gonna have to.
Oh, well, then I like that other idea, rent it out and lose $700 for
I
a
did
year.
too. I did
Do they have
too.
a house that they can move to?
He
that's
has a house in
free
Boyd,
clear?
free and clear.
I'll try to hold on to it as long as I could to make up that difference. Just pay the 700.
I had that thought too.
Yeah.
But she wasn't too enthusiastic about it.
I have friends that I just helped buy a tiny home in Alito, which if Alito is not a destination, I'd have no idea why people want to short-term rental there. And a tiny home, 468 square feet, and he is making $3,000 a month.
Just like a.
Yeah, just Airbnb, stuck on Airbnb, he's making $3,000 a month on it.
Sometimes I'll just make it like.
They have to have somewhere to go. People are looking for staycations. It's close enough to the Metroplex. I have no freaking clue how he makes it. He makes more money off of that one than he makes off the other two STRs.
Now, I know that VAs can be assumed to another veteran. That was the other thought too. But then,
Assumptions are
but
always,
then they're also,
you can maybe try, but
They're tricky.
I've never seen a successful assumption.
But that would make their payments probably lower because his interest rate's lower, right?
Yeah.
Well, I think that it's possible that we could see some of those coming through the market with interest rates. If people locked in the 3s and the low 4s, I mean, it makes sense for a seller to offer that if they can't sell the house outright. You see what I'm saying? You know,
Yeah, I mean,
you're selling the
case,
rate.
The new owner has to understand that they're assuming
the whatever they had.
$350,000.
Equity,
a loan,
Yeah.
a home that's not worth.
Yes.
I mean, so it's gonna be tough to find somebody that's gonna be like, yeah, I'll just
Well,
hook you up and just
wouldn't
take
they,
over a house that.
yeah, and wouldn't they need an appraisal once they went over to the assumption?
So it does.
So
It
there's that.
requires a VA appraiser. Approved by the lender. Yes.
I
and
think you
then-
have
and
the
then they
solution.
said,
They
yeah.
gotta move and just keep the 700.
Yeah.
I mean, they short sale it, he's done for his credit. It's just gonna be
What is
destroyed
that,
for a long
eight?
time.
$8,500 over the year that, and in 1 year, he's going to probably be able to get some of that money back a lot more than
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
If he can afford that 700, that makes a lot more sense. And maybe he can get 2,200. I don't know. You
Well, how
never know.
long is the forbearance?
Yeah, it's 18 months. Why can't he just stay in
Because
forbearance?
He's,
Well, I
He can
guess
get
it
up to 18
depends.
months, depending on how much he used on the
They
first
told
one.
they told him that he had to,
Is it like
He
US
said
government
forbearance, I know
forbearance,
it.
or is it just a forbearance plan through the servicing?
he's gonna send me the application that he filled out. Cause I don't know, cause the agent that he spoke to told him that he has a, don't do anything until August 31st.
The agent he has.
Yes, from the servicer, from.
The loan
mortgage
servicing.
Yeah,
Okay.
Mortgage servicer.
You kept saying agent. I'm like,
well, no, that's.
what are you, chopped liver?
It's from the mortgage company,
Oh, okay.
the service.
Well, hey guys, Ashley, thank you for joining us. I'm going to sign off of YouTube or for the video right now, and we're going to continue talking, but see you guys later.